Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of What Do You Do podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here is my co-host Cal Vola, and today we have a special guest. Emma Priestner is on our podcast today. But before we dive into what Emma does today and everything that she's gone through, I want to take a quick second and just look at how amazing this sign that we have in our podcast studio. And I want to give a huge shout out to my mom, Heidi Tillmans, which owns a graphic design wood making facility called Majo Page Creative. I'm going to make sure I put a link down below in the comments, so be sure to check her out. And if you are looking for a custom sign, don't hesitate to reach out to her. But let's dive into Emma. Emma, thank you so much for being a part of the show. This is exciting. Just to give you a little backstory, Emma and I have known each other for quite some time. Probably about
5 years.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen each other for 5 years, but yeah, it's almost probably been 8 years since we've known each other, or even like maybe closer to 9 years, right? Geez, wow. Time flies when you get older. But there's a lot of things that you were doing back in the day. I remember you were a car salesperson. You went into photography. I remember I got you to come out and take some pictures of my car. But run us through quickly, your childhood growing up, what you did, and kind of all the kind of journeys that led you to what you're doing today. So,
wow. Okay,
everything.
Let's go.
We want to know.
Yeah. So, well, I definitely have lived like a pretty eventful life. We'll say that. I grew up in Burlington, commonly known as Borington, because it is pretty boring. I was raised in a family of academic people who played sports, so I was kind of expected to play sports, which I hated sports. I'm still not a sports person. So I got signed up to race sailboats.
Oh, cool.
So most of my childhood, I was racing sailboats. I made it to Team Ontario for sailing, and competed in a lot of regattas kind of across Ontario, in Kingston and in Toronto at different yacht clubs, which was really cool. Got to meet a lot of different people because of that. And then from there, I did not play any sports. And then I was really big into music. So I joined the Burlington Teen Tour Band, which is super random, but...
And what did you play?
I was...
Oh, God. Sensitive question.
I played the flag. Proud to say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
That's
I was
good.
part of Color Guard. So basically, we are the people at the front of the parades holding like the provincial flags, things like that. We also spin flags and batons sometimes, even rifles, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
I went to Hawaii with the Teen Tour Band, so that was a really cool experience. And yeah, so most of that was just kind of random. In high school, I got really big into robotics. I thought I wanted to be into like robotics engineering, so I did robotics competitions and won some Halton Skills competitions in robotics, and then decided that was not really my opportunity of where I wanted to grow. I even tried. I went to school for network engineering and software development.
Where'd you go?
I went to Sheridan.
You went to Sheridan. Okay. That's in Oakville?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
But I ended up dropping out because it was really boring and nobody talked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really cool. It's interesting, but it's not for me, and it's not for people. If you want to talk to people or you want to be social, don't go into computer engineering.
Sure.
100%.
It's more like an introverted type thing for the most part.
Yeah.
You're a very social person, like very outgoing and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you need to, have that human element where you can be social. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I still have a lot of friends from that program who've gone and beyond and succeeded. And then after that, I tried business marketing. I was like, hey, let's try another course. And then I dropped out because I was bored.
Right.
And then just decided to pursue working in dealerships. And then I'd worked at dealerships as a salesperson for a really long time, and then I ended up moving forward into the service department.
Which, just so you know, I want to give you huge credit, because you were actually one of the biggest reasons as to why I became in the car sales industry, because you went into Subaru sales before I did. I was still an apprentice mechanic, and it was you that got me excited about like, oh wow, commission sales, that's exciting. You
just gotta talk to people.
Talk to people, convince them, and so a huge thank you for that, because it's funny because I think I still have your Anvik book.
You probably do. I've always wondered what happened to that.
You gave it to me, and it had all of the sticky notes on every page of like what it was. I'm like, wow, she's really organized. I'm gonna pass this test with flying colors, and surely I did. So thank you so much for.
Glad it helped. Yeah, that was like the Bible. That was the Anvik Bible at that point.
Yeah.
I had lent that book out, I think, to like 7 different people, and they're like, "This is the best for passing this test. And I was like, glad I could help.
It's like all the spark notes, like everything important that you needed to know in there. It's all ready to go.
yeah.
Everything. Like it was color coordinated and everything.
Yeah,
It was-
highlighted stuff.
no.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because what's cool about the Onvic test is that you could take the book with you in I think it's 90 minutes that you have
Yeah.
to do the test in. And sure enough, like she had all the labels that was sticking out of the book marked, right? So I just, done. Like everything was so organized. And it's funny because I remember showing up to the place. I'm like, hi, I'm here to write my Onvic test. And they're like, wow, that's a nice organized book. I'm like, thank you.
You're like, you're welcome.
Yeah, I know. It's a fun fact that I'm sure you probably did not know.
That's amazing. That actually makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
That's awesome because it is a really cool career, car sales, because it's an interesting opportunity, and if you are in car sales, you probably understand or have been in car sales. It's very cool the people you get to meet along the way because not everyone is the same. Everyone is wild. Honestly, I think the craziest person I dealt with was a dog whisperer. Yeah, that was at Subaru, probably my favorite customer. Wow. But
it is actually kind of interesting you say that. And I think that's actually probably one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to start the podcast, because every time I'd have a conversation with a customer, number one question, what do you do? Because you're here buying a brand new $60,000, $100,000 vehicle. You must be doing something pretty good. And it always was part of my conversation. So, I mean.
Yeah, you find out some people have some very interesting careers, honestly. Like some things, like I remember one time we had a underwater welder at Toyota, and I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. I didn't even know that existed. And it was just like, what do you have to do to get to there? Like, to get to that point to be able to weld underwater, right? So,
yeah.
Sure. So how long were you doing that for, Emma?
Probably, I started in car sales probably in about 2015. I stopped selling 2017 and 2018 and went into service then. And then I did parts for a bit, then went back to service. And then I was like, I do not like this industry anymore.
Right. Yeah, it does take a toll because I know commission's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Especially the fluctuation. You have your, especially for me right now, I'm in this like lull, and some people don't like going through the lull, but then once you hit that good part, it's raining money, and then all of a sudden you're spending it like crazy. Yeah. So it's definitely sometimes being more on a fixed payment schedule is a lot easier for a lot of people, right? Yeah. But what was that? You said you went to service after?
Yep. And then I worked in service for a bit. I worked at Brantford Chev for a while, and that was a lot of fun, honestly. It was a really fun dealership because we did a lot with the Circle Dirt Track Racing community. So we got to go to a lot of their events, which kind of opened my eyes to like a whole other side of motorsports that I did not even know existed, which was really cool. And then COVID hit, and then I got laid off because there was 6 advisors, and they did not need 6 advisors during COVID. So I ended up moving home, and I was home for about a month. I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend and leaving Brantford, and I was like, I'm going back to Waterdown where my mom was. And I sat there, and I was like, I want to go out west. And I decided to drive out west for 3 months and then travel all over Alberta and British Columbia. And, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Went out to British Columbia. Why'd you go out there?
I'd always wanted to go out west. I'd always wanted to see. I just love hiking. I love nature. I loved all that kind of stuff. And I'd always been interested in just different trail hiking out there and just all the mountains and everything because it's beautiful. And I ended up, I went all over. I did northern Saskatchewan and southern Saskatchewan. I went southern Alberta and northern Alberta. I went into the Badlands. I went to a bunch of abandoned like mining towns, which was really sick. We went over into like northern BC and like went all through northern BC, down the coast, all that way.
Wow.
And yeah, I went to the island, lower mainland BC. We literally did, I went with a good friend of mine and my dog, and we literally did everything we could. We went to drift events. We got to see, and I got to meet the Rocky Mountain Drift Club guys who are awesome. They're a really good community of guys. They actually, their whole track is an old World War II training camp for pilots and stuff. So they have a giant skid pad, and it's surrounded by all these old World War II buildings, which is pretty cool. And then in the horizon, you just see the Rocky Mountains.
Wow.
It's unreal.
What a vibe that must have been, eh?
Yeah.
Like, I want to go there.
Well, when we take this podcast mobile, we certainly will.
Yeah, you'll have to visit them. They're a good time. They'll show you a good party for sure.
Wow. That's too cool. And then what are you diving in now today? What's your focus on during COVID or...
So then when I came back from out west, I tried to work at one more dealership. I was like, well, I'll give this one more go. I worked at a Volkswagen dealership in service, which was probably the worst decision I have ever made in my life because it's Volkswagen and their warranty is a pain in the butt to anyone thinking about working for Volkswagen.
Wow.
No offense.
True.
But Yeah. So then that just was not it. I ended up getting this opportunity to try welding. CWB, which is the Canadian Welding Bureau, offers this course. It's a week long, and it's called Women of Steel. And the idea is to get more women into the welding industry. So it's only women. They take on, I believe, 12 applicants at a time. They provide you with a welding mask, your gloves, everything like that, and you just learn your basic MIG welding. And then you actually have the opportunity to go for a certification for welding at the end of it. And then if you pass, you have that welding certification to use to apply to jobs for. So I did that while I was still working at that dealership, and I fell in love with welding, and I was like, I can't do this. I quit the Volkswagen job, and then I ended up getting a job at a precast place, so concrete precast. So they do concrete forms, so barriers, they can do cisterns, lots of different things if depending on what was needed or what was ordered. And I learned a lot there. It sucked because you're welding rebar, and rebar is awful metal to weld.
Sure.
Oh, no.
It's very dirty, but it was definitely a really good experience. I ended up hurting my leg. I tripped and I fell, and my foot got caught in a bundle of rebar, and then I fell backwards. My body went one way, my leg was the other.
Oh, no.
And I popped my whole knee out, and
Oh my goodness.
yeah. You're just like,
Are you okay?
yeah, are you okay? You're so nonchalant about this.
Oh my god.
Wow. I feel like I was almost about to pass out just you explaining the story to me.
Yeah, so, and it's rough too, because like being a girl in trades and being a girl in welding, you can't seem weak. So I was like, oh, I just kind of like hurt my knee a bit. So I actually tried to continue to weld after with my knee popped out.
Oh.
I tried to get up, and I was like hobbling, just trying to finish my tacks, and then I like just kind of crawled over to the person I was working with. I was like, can you come here? And they're like, are you okay? And I was like, no, like I think I need help. And then yeah, I ended up going to the hospital. They didn't see anything broken, but they thought I tore everything in my knee. They thought it was a full ACL, MCL, meniscus tear, just based on the way it just popped right out. But it wasn't, thankfully. But they did put me in a Zimmer splint from probably October until February. And then I started walking again in February, and then I was walking with a cane up until March. And then I got a new job working at a trucking company where they do like add-ons and attachments to trucks and vehicles. So if you ever see like the air liquid trucks or anything like that, how they have the different things added on, or the different bodies, is essentially what I was doing. I worked there for about 2 weeks, and then realized it was super unsafe because they were just open welding galvanized, and just was like, yeah, just weld galvanized with no protection or anything. And if you know,
like a ventilator or anything
nothing.
like that. Okay.
Oh yeah, and
Wow.
like people are welding galvanized all around you and stuff, like nothing, and you're just like, this is good.
Wow.
And then so I ended up getting galv poisoning from that. Well, not full poisoning, but I got very sick from it essentially.
Right.
Which was good that I left that job, because it was really, they didn't really care about any of that. And then I ended up working for a mining company for a bit, which is really interesting.
Okay, one thing I just want to take in consideration, you have been all over the map.
Yeah.
You know, like, actually, what's really cool, I'm sure you learned and you've met a lot of people, but I'm just sitting here blown away as to how much stuff you've done in your career. And how old are you now?
I'm 26.
Wow. Just
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Incredible. Oh my goodness.
And just one question I want to ask, I mean,
Yeah.
it might be a more sensitive topic for a lot of people, but what is it like being in a male-dominated industry with welding? Like, did you ever feel that you were, not good enough for it, whatever the case is? Like, what was your...
100%.
Really?
I have been undermined by so many people, and it takes a while to realize that a lot of these people are just very insecure of you. And it sucks to realize that, because you're like, you've worked so hard to get somewhere, and you're working hard, and it's just, they don't care because they don't think it's right. Like, I've had men be like, why is there a woman in this shop? And like things like that. Yeah, like the one shop I worked at, the mining shop, was in Aurelia, so it's like, it's pretty old boy territory up there still. Like, you got old boys. That's what it is. And that, I like, don't get me wrong, I love working with the old boys, because some of them are great. Some of them are the most supportive, and they'll actually teach you things. And then there's some of them who are just so stuck in their ways that they don't believe that women should be a part of a trade, and they will make you feel like you should not be a part of a trade. And those people are just bullshit.
Yeah, and I know a lot of those guys don't have any filters.
No, they don't. Oh no.
Like I was in the trade for, I think, a total of 2 years, 3 years when I was doing my apprentice, and that's what I learned really quickly. These guys just will tell you anything that's on their mind.
Yeah, I've had some pretty creepy situations. Like, I had one shop I worked at where, like, a customer came in and, like, came up behind me and grabbed me, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing, sir?
Right.
Like, I literally whipped around, and I was like, you can back right up right now. And, like, just not appropriate things. And the mining shop I actually worked at in Aurelia let me go after I came back after having to get my wisdom tooth removed, kind of emergency situation. So basically my wisdom tooth got impacted and it cracked. So the whole side of my face was like swollen. So I had to last minute call in. I was off for the week just because of everything from coming down from that. And I came in and the foreman, he's like, yeah, you don't work here anymore. I was like, sick.
Wow.
Thanks for that. And like, it's interesting too because that place, it was a good opportunity to learn some things, but it was also very toxic in the sense that all the guys would literally sweep up piles of dirt and then expect me to pick up that pile of dirt and throw it up for them and shit like that. And like, the owner wouldn't let me use any of the machinery. He didn't believe that women should be allowed to use any of the machinery, like bandsaw, anything like that. And like, it's a fucking bandsaw.
Right.
Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to use a bandsaw at the end of the day.
Sure.
So it's definitely, it's hard. It's the same with the automotive industry as well, though. Like, I encountered so many things, even at Bud Subaru. And I had one of the salespeople completely, like, just say some awful things to me and, like, sexual things. And I was like, you are, like, 50 years old and have a wife and kids and a daughter, and you think this is appropriate to say to someone. And it really is mind-blowing. It is changing. It's not the fastest changing. I'd say the automotive industry is doing a lot better at being more inclusive towards women, but welding is a very old industry and an old trade, I'd say, where it's hard. Like, even to get into the welding unions, it's very difficult because you've got your local 46, and to get into your local 46, you need to know someone, but, like, it doesn't mean you're always in either, right? So.
But yeah, I'm sure you're glad you did it, though.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of
100%.
the day, you love welding.
I would not change it ever again,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, they're working with my hands, everything like that. It's such an awesome experience. Doing welding is so cool, honestly. Like, if you've ever been interested in it, try it. Like, it's one of those things that it does take time to get a good weld, but when you get a good weld, it's a nice weld. Like, it looks sick, and it's satisfying, right?
And I've done some welding myself, nothing professional, but it's something, there's just something satisfying about it too. You know, like you're creating this arc. It's certainly, patience, right? You go too fast, it's not going to get hot enough. You go too slow, it gets too hot, melts through. Like, it definitely is an art to it, and it takes time, and it is a cool trade for a lot of people, and I'm sure it does pay quite well. I don't know what the stats are on average.
Yeah, what was kind of the entry-level paying position for you, Emma, like when you first got out of that schooling and the first job?
So it kind of depends. It depends on what industry you go into, because you can always find cheap jobs for welding that will pay you $18 an hour.
Right.
They're not always going to be the best environment either, but to get into welding, it's one of those things where if you can find a job that will take you on and allow you to learn, that's the skill. And then once you kind of hone that, then you can start applying other places if you don't think it's the best place. But like, I'd say my first job, I was getting paid $16 an hour, which is awful for welding.
Yeah, for sure.
Truthfully.
Because I'm sure you guys, I know some guys, the customers that I had, they were making upwards about like $40 to $60 an hour for sure. But those guys were, I think, more of mobile. When you come to you, and they do all sorts of welding, right? So, but I guess the more time you put in, the more hours you have, the more you're worth, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the wages have started to go up in the welding industry as well, because they were realizing that there was a very large lack in wage increasing in that industry. It is a very large industry in demand because pretty much all of our welders are retiring as of the next 3 to 4 years. So those wages will probably start to increase as well, because there's going to be so little people who actually have the ability to weld a lot of the stuff, because they haven't been intaking as much.
True.
Right.
So,
wow. So the demand's still going to be there if it's not increasing, and supply of labor is obviously decreasing. Baby boomers are retiring, all that kind of stuff. They've been doing it for so long. They're like, man, I'm done. And we need the next generation to come up and be able to fulfill those jobs and whatnot. So, I mean, if someone's like younger and they're like, oh my God, like, you enjoy welding, where could I go if I'm a young person? Like, I just want to try welding and see what it's all about. I know there's high school programs, we had shop back in the day. That's where I learned how to weld. But do you know of anywhere that, like, if it's not in school, where they might be able to go and try welding?
Yeah, so that's awesome that your school had welding. My school did not. We only had a carpentry shop actually at my high school, which is pretty balls. But I'm not gonna lie, I realized like growing up, I'm like, damn, I wish I actually had the opportunity to weld as a kid.
Sure.
There are a lot of programs. Mohawk actually has an introduction to welding program. They actually that is free. They actually have a whole course program book thing that has a lot of introductions to different trades. So if you want to get into construction or welding or garden management, anything like that, they have these. I think it's over about 8 weeks, 1 day a week in class courses where you get to learn introduction to whatever. So I also did that, took on that opportunity because I wanted to learn more about stick welding. So that's also an opportunity. If you are just kind of looking to start and get a job, look at applying to different shops by you, near you, see if they'll take you on as an apprentice. The hard thing with the welding industry is it's very hard to get an apprenticeship. It seems like in a lot of other trades, it's a lot easier to come by shops that have actually trained people to be apprentices and have sent them to school. Where welding, you either can be a CWB certified shop or you don't have to be. If you're CWB certified, your welders have to get tested regularly. They have to know that they're passing that specific skill, everything like that. So it's a much harder job to get into, but it's a lot more worth it because you're actually getting trained properly.
So. Interesting.
Yeah.
What are the different types of welding?
There's a lot. So
well, it's funny you actually say that.
Yeah,
I could only think of 3, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got MIG, TIG, and stick.
Yeah,
right?
You've got oxyacetylene welding as well. You can, if you go into the subcategories of that, like stick, you can do flux welding, non-flux, you have all of that. With TIG, you're mainly doing your aluminum and stainless. MIG, you can be doing everything. MIG, you've got metal core, which is MIG essentially, but then you have your hard wire, you have flux core wire, like different opportunities to use those types of welding for essentially. And then you have your underwater welding, which is like a whole other field that I actually have no idea. A good buddy of mine is actually trying to go forward into underwater welding. He's just going for his commercial diver's license now, and then he's going to be going to school for that, which it's about $10,000 a year to get into college for underwater welding. Yeah,
Wow.
It's a very niche job just because it's so hard on your body. Typically, underwater welders only work for about 10 years and then they're done. Just because of the pressure from the chambers and going into those hyperbaric chambers constantly to be dropped down and stuff like that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So those guys get paid a lot of money.
Yeah, those are the $100 an hour guys. Those are the ones making 6 figures, no issues. And same with your pipeliner guys, right? Like your pipeliner guys are rough around the edges, but that's because they deal with some rough crap, honestly.
Right.
So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I did meet an underwater welder as one of my customers, and he didn't actually know anything about welding. It's just he was a commercial diver.
Yeah.
So, and I think it was one of his friends that said, you know what, have you thought of doing underwater welding? And he only does the welding like 4 months out of the year, and then that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he goes again the next year, which it's.
And they make enough, and like those 4 months, they clear so much. It's the same with Boilermakers. It's the same thing. It's like they're very unique trades where they're very specially qualified, and it's such hard circumstances on your bodies as well that they do only have that short term, because I don't think that you can stay in those chambers for longer than a certain amount of time, and then they have to give themselves the off time to like recuperate and so forth.
Now, going back to how you got into welding.
Yeah.
So the workshop that you did, was that a paid workshop? How did you find it?
So that was free. A good friend of mine actually sent it to me because his friend was running the program because she works for CWB. Now that program is offered through most Ontario colleges. So you can find it at Mohawk, Conestoga, I believe Niagara College as well, and Seneca. They're really upping their welding programs and trying to get that welding intake and those intro to welding courses, because I think that is the most intimidating thing about welding is like, how do you do it? Like, and starting it, right? Because if you've welded, I don't know if you've welded, if you've burned through metal, you're kind of just like, what the heck?
What do I do
Bring
next?
it back.
Yeah, like, can I just resurrect this metal, please? Like,
Sure.
yeah, so definitely, it's called Women of Steel. Even if you look up any intro to welding programs, try to find something like that. I know Mohawk offers the City School Intro to Welding and those other intro programs. And you never know. Like, I know there's different things here and there. There's a girl I know in Newmarket who offers I think it's once every 2 months they do like a MIG course up there. That is, I believe, $250, but it's a full weekend and a full breakdown of welding for you and stuff like that. So there are the opportunities. There are private colleges as well, but they are very expensive.
And just to try it out, learn, see if you like it,
Yeah.
right? Instead of going and diving into, years of schooling and coming out realizing you don't like it, right? I think it just takes that extra little bit of just making sure, have some fun with it at the beginning, make it into like a hobby maybe, and then dive into a career after. But I know that you're not only into the automotive industry as a career, but also outside of your career. What have you got into it now besides welding? What is your focus of Emma today?
I also host women's motorsports events. So I started last year with drifting at Shannonville. I had 4 events, and they were skid pad events, and I actually had 40 women come out and drift over the whole year, which is insane because I've never seen 40 women on track before. I don't know about you. At any CSCS event, I don't think we've ever seen that many women come out, which is pretty amazing.
Sure. And for people that are listening or watching, drifting is...
Going sideways.
Controlled driving is the best way to put that.
Know.
Sure.
It's like
controlled chaos.
Yeah,
in the car,
controlled chaos in a car. Loud noises, tires burning.
If you find yourself going fast enough left, you're going right. Or something.
That's a Cars quote.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was gonna say. It's just like the famous line, trying to describe drifting.
Yeah. So essentially, it's you're kind of just throwing your car around a corner as fast as possible and hoping back end kind of kicks out of it, and you hear a tires screeching, maybe some smoke, and you're good to go.
What does it take to organize an event? Because I'm sure a lot of it comes down to social media, networking, meeting people. Like, how do you get 40 women to come to a drifting event?
Honestly, I was surprised that 40 women came out. I'm not gonna lie. My expectations were completely exceeded last year, and that's why we've grown so much this year. For event planning, honestly, I started with the skid pad events because I figured it's a small enough space. I'm not expected to have this huge front of cash for the track, and then I can kind of price it fairly so these girls can come out, feel like they're not getting judged, and they can kind of do it in this safe space where they can learn and like not have every dude at the track watching them. And then it kind of worked out, and it kind of carried itself through, honestly, because there were so many girls that wanted to learn to drift but didn't want to get watched by 100 dudes at the track.
Yeah, sure. That's so true, right? And be judged, or, they started second guessing themselves, and then they started making mistakes or whatever the case is. Now, what is a skid pad? That's just an open area?
It's like a giant parking lot, essentially, but without all of the lights or anything in the middle. It's just a giant area where you can set up a layout so you can learn. You can go along with the layout. You can try donuts. You can try controlled figure eights, and then kind of go from there, and then build up enough to go to the track.
So how did you get into drifting?
So for me, I originally got into cars because of a boyfriend. I think I was always into cars. I just never had anyone in my family into vehicles. Like, nobody in my family has a car. Like, they all think I'm absolutely insane for everything I do, which is fine because I love it. But I started with Subarus, and then I was really big in the Subaru community. I did a lot of automotive photography for them, and then I bought a Toyota Cressida, and it was 1UZ swapped, which is the 1UZ is the V8 from the Lexus LS400.
Okay.
So I bought this car. It was like kind of a jalopy pre-built drift car kind of deal. Super sketchy, still is super sketchy. Love that for it. And then that was kind of my like intro step into drifting, and then I kind of fell in love. And I just started going to all the events. There was these events called Drift Jam events, which were awesome. They're hosted by a friend of mine named Jover. There's also the Top Drift events, which were hosted by Blake, which used to be at Shannonville, are now at Grand Bend and Cayuga. And I just started attending all these events, and I started meeting all these people, and I was like, wow, like, this is a lot of fun. Like, this is a lot of fun. Okay. Yeah. And then I started doing photography for the drift events, and then I wanted to be in a drift car drifting at these drift events, and then that's kind of what promoted all of that. And then
how you got into it. Yeah. That's so cool, right? I started as your hobby, right? Learning something new, and now it's becoming your career, your passion. Making a movement for women that want to be out in cars and drifting. Which is really cool.
Yep, and not just drifting. Now we're doing show and shine and lapping this year. We have 2 events at Cayuga for show and shine, lapping, drifting, and then we have 2 events in Alberta this year as well.
These are your events?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And
Oh
do
my
you
goodness.
know the dates so we could let our viewers know?
Oh, yes. Okay. So April 22nd, which is literally in 2 weekends, is our first event. That's our spring slide. October 22nd is our season closer, and that's also at Cayuga. We do have a couple skid pad events in there as well, just for people who are not ready to hop on track yet but want to give her a go. And we do have rental cars available.
Rental cars. And what does that mean? Like no one has to bring their own car. You provide the cars, everything?
Yep. So if you don't have a car and you want to learn to drift, or you are interested in drifting but you don't want to sink your feet into the financial burden of drifting, definitely a good opportunity to try it then.
Sure. Wow.
We're doing it. After all the girls leave, we'll go so no one judges us.
Judgment free.
Oh, wow. That's so funny.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so you have 2 events. Is there anything else you're doing this year?
Alberta as well.
Is August 26th.
Okay.
That's at Stratotech Park, which is a really sick track. Actually, it's all like graded, which is really nice. So I'm excited to drive that track.
Cool.
And then we're working on a skid pad event as well out west. And then I'm also coaching for exotics this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
What is that?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Wow. You're dabbling in everything. Just, my mind's blowing. Everyone always told me stick to one thing.
No, we do everything here. We don't just stop at one
Yeah.
thing.
Sure.
So this year I got the opportunity to be an instructor with Cayuga, with their exotics team, as well as the GTA exotics team as well. So 2 different groups. GTA exotics, I actually got that connection through a lovely lady named Anna, who runs Team GSR, who she's been involved in racing for about the last 20 years or so. And she's kind of like one of the first women who really kind of has made a move and like a mark in Ontario as well for motorsports, I'd say. She actually used to compete at CSCS, which is really, really cool.
Cool.
She built a drift car and then kind of went back to lapping. But yeah, so essentially I'll be going along in these exotic car packages. So essentially you can purchase the opportunity to drive an exotic car, whether it be a Lamborghini, Audi, Ferrari. They even have McLarens. They have quite a variety of options. And then I get to sit in the car with you and tell you kind of
How to operate it.
Make sure you're not being too crazy, but also make sure you're having a great time, and also like not downshifting all the way.
Right.
Sure.
To first gear
Sure.
when you're going 80 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean. Yeah. So that's a new experience that I'm actually taking on this year, which I'm really excited for, the opportunity to get to do that. I'm also super excited to go out west for my drift events this year.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Wow.
It's going to be a busy year, but it's going to be good.
Yeah. So I went to, I don't know which track we went to, but I did that exact thing. Like we rented a package.
Yep.
Me, my dad, my brother. We all went out there where I think I was in like a GTR. My dad was in a Ferrari. My brother was in a Lambo.
That's awesome.
And it was such a cool experience. Like just having the instructor beside you, like teaching you how to, drive, when to accelerate, when to brake, when to turn, all that. And like, it has changed the way I drive now. Like, when you're going into hard corners, or even being a defensive driver out there, if someone like pulls out on you, don't like brake and turn, you need to brake, take your foot off the brake, then turn, and all that sort of stuff. So it was such a cool experience. So how do people come out and get involved and see you, Emma, this summer if they want to learn from you?
Emma does. So Hashira Ladies is the women's motorsports events. The idea is intimidation free. All women are welcomed. Any skill level. We want to have a big party just to kind of celebrate, because there's a lot of ladies in motorsports and we're all scattered everywhere. So just definitely come out to those events. Always support your local ladies in motorsports, because they get enough grief as it is. So don't be a dick. That's the best piece of mine I could say, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, follow me. I guess my Instagram is Emma's Dilemmas. It's very
cool,
fitting.
Yeah, you're just all over the map.
I have ADHD, so it's somewhat
all three of
excusable.
us
I think
here.
we all do.
Oh,
So
perfect.
I'm eating popcorn every second.
So yeah,
my goodness, so
but
cool.
yeah, the Hashira Ladies is the best way to find the motorsports events. You can probably find me at any local track event. If I'm not at the track, I am probably in the woods somewhere.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
Or working on cars. Yeah, that's always a never ending.
Or working in general.
Yeah, true. I know, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so Emma, for people that are listening, women that want to get into the trades, do you have any piece of advice that you want to give them?
Yeah, for sure. So women getting in trades, it can seem super overwhelming, super intimidating, but don't let it. It's not worth it. All those men that think they are tough guys are all little teddy bears. 20 out of 10. Can vouch. I have worked with a lot of them who look so scary, and they look like they could yell at you at any moment, and they are the best teachers and they most willing to teach you, honestly. You will deal with douches. There is no doubt about it. There are dickheads everywhere in the world. But don't let it turn you away from the actual trade, because any trade, if it's what you want to do, it's worth it. And if the business that you are working for doesn't support you, there are tens of thousands of other businesses that I'm sure that are willing to support you and make sure you succeed in your career. There are different groups on Instagram. There's Women on Site, which is a whole Instagram group that actually helps promote and connect women in trades with other women in trades. There's OBCT, I believe it's called, Women in Trades as well, which is another thing, connects you with women who are Red Seals or apprentices or anything like that, or wherever they are in their trades, just so you have someone you can connect with or talk with more. There's a lot of opportunities. You just kind of have to look for them, and they kind of pop up. There are a lot of women on Instagram that also work with other women to help support women in trades, and you can kind of see them across the board. Yeah.
Awesome. It's so true. I mean, there's a lot of dying trades just in general, and if there's a lot of women that want to get into it, right? I mean, absolutely, bring them on.
Heck
right?
yeah.
We need them, right?
Heck yeah. And women are actually more times than not better workers than the men are, especially in welding. Most women are actually better welders than men, which I think is what men make them a little insecure, but
right.
Be like that.
Don't say that out loud, okay?
We have a bit better attention to detail, and I've been told that by so many.
I agree. I mean, I fully agree. There are certain things that, I mean, men, we're kind of all over the place a lot of times. We're really, really good at, the things that we're good at, but there's things that, that men can't do. And I think like being really focused and attention detail is a huge one, being organized, all that kind of stuff. So
and patience too, right? I mean, welding's a lot of patience, and there's a lot of guys out there that don't have any patience.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm one of them.
Yeah. There is that though, honestly. Like, I've worked for shops where like I messed one thing up, and like I was new and the owner knew I'd only been welding for 4 months, and like the owner lost his mind, like started throwing shit across the shop, and I looked at him and I was like, "Sir, I don't know what you expect of me," but that I just looked at him and I was like, "What the f-?" And he did not come at me ever again. He just knew in that moment. He's like, "Okay, she is a force to be reckoned with. We are not going to be kind of."
I'm sure women
don't mess with Emma.
Well, you gotta. I'm sure
you stand your ground.
Oh, yeah. I do. You have to. You have to have the ability to stand your ground, because everyone is going to try and walk all over you. Yeah. Everyone is going to make up some stupid excuse as to why you're not good enough, and them. Honestly, I worked for a drag shop, and I had this guy yell at me because I didn't do spark plugs on a Dodge Ram fast enough. And if you know anything about Dodge Rams, they have 16 spark plugs.
Right. I remember that. 2
spark plugs per cylinder. Sorry for all the story. Beep. but honestly, and he's like, "You should have this done in an hour." I'd never done spark plugs on a Dodge Ram in my life. I've done spark plugs on a Subaru. Do you know how easy it is to do spark plugs on a Subaru? 1, 2, 3, 4. This Dodge Ram was my nightmare. It took me 3 hours to do spark plugs, which I found out it's like typical, I think, 2 hours time is what Dodge actually charges. He got so mad at me. He's like, "I can't believe you wasted all that time putting those spark plugs in." And I looked at him. I was like, "Sir, I've never done this before, and you left me to do this by myself. I figured it out, and I got it done. Is your truck misfiring?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "I don't see any problem then."
Yeah, next time do it yourself, asshole.
Why do you have me doing your daily spark plugs then, you asshole? Like,
Oh man, that's awesome.
Wow.
yeah, so don't let...
So it lets you get tougher skin, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
That's great.
And you need that tough skin, honestly, in life as it is. Because, like, people will try to push you around, and, like, don't let them. Honestly, I've had people... Like, when I was younger, I got pushed around a lot, and I let people push me around, and I was a people pleaser. And honestly, it's not worth it. It's not at all. You have to look out for yourself, and you have to make sure you can look after yourself. And like, that's kind of what it comes down to.
And I mean, even me growing up, I mean, I've been a yes man, a people pleaser. Like I always, I don't want anyone, to let anyone down, and you feel like by saying yes and like helping people as much as you can is benefiting you. But in the end, I think it's actually doing the opposite. And you like start to live your life for other people where you need to live your life for yourself, and you need to like go out and focus on what's good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so important.
Yeah. That's
great. Awesome.
Sorry.
No, it's great, honestly. And it's, we'll wrap up the podcast. Emma, it's such a great guest to have you on the part of the show. One question we always like to ask everybody: if you could give yourself 20-year-old advice, what would it be?
Give my 20-year-old self advice.
Yep.
Slow down. That's it. Just slow down. It's not a race. As much as it may seem like I make everything a race and I'm trying to do everything, but it's taken me a long time to realize like it's okay to just slow down, take in the scenery, because like everything around you is so precious and you really don't realize how precious it is. So that's what I have.
That's great advice for me right now. Thank you.
No, it's true. It's true. Like a really good friend of mine that I had met because of Subaru, she actually passed away in February, and it really made me like realize like our time is so valuable, and it's just don't rush everything. It's not worth it. You don't have to grow up as fast as possible. Just feel yourself, enjoy yourself, and just be happy.
Wow, great advice. And last question, where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now?
I have no.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer.
We're just gonna focus on the journey.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep going.
That's right.
No. Honestly, I really like to see myself have my red seal in welding. That is a really big goal I would like to achieve. Just because that is something that I am trying to strive towards currently, is eventually get that apprenticeship for my red seal. And I'd love to see Hashira ladies grow even more. I'd love to see us in British Columbia and Montreal next year, because I know we have a lot of ladies who want to drift in Montreal, which is sick.
That's great.
I know Keega is so far for them, so I'm hoping I can make that happen for them. And even if I can do more in any way, just help more ladies feel like they're not being watched by everyone, and like make them feel confident enough to go to the track and like actually compete against guys and show them up. Because honestly, some of these ladies, holy, I had one girl, she came out to our first event and just, blew my mind. She had never drifted a day in her life. She was in her boyfriend's G sedan, and she was linking corners like none other, doing figure eights within like the first 2 hours of the day. Wow. Never even tried it before.
Wow.
So you never know what you're going to be good at.
It's so true until you try.
Yep.
Wow. Thank you again so much, Emma, for being on today's podcast. Had a lot of laughs, had a lot of inspirational talks, and what a great story you had. It sounds like you've been all over the map, but, it sounds like you certainly found your calling. So we certainly wish you all the best, and we'll definitely be a part of all your events in the future and everything to come, because we are also huge in the automotive industry, and I'm excited to get back in my car today, or this year rather. But to everyone listening or watching on YouTube, thank you so much for being a part of today's podcast. If you like today's episode, be sure to hit that like button and hit subscribe so you don't miss out any further content. And just to say a huge thank you to my mom for this beautiful sign, be sure to look at the link down below at Majo Page Creative and get yours ordered today. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. We will catch you in the next episode. See you guys. Woo! I'm getting better at that.
Yes.
Good job.
Good job.
Sorry, my hands
Thank
are
you
sweaty
so
because I was
much.
like talking.